So since its launch on March 11th, I've been using the MacBook Air M5, and it's been my daily driver ever since then. I upgraded from my M1 MacBook Air, and in this video, I'm going to be covering it from a photographer's perspective, and I'll be going into how it works in terms of managing photo editing software, what it's like in terms of heavy long day use, and how much you can expect to get from a single charge. All that and more as I get into this MacBook Air M5 review. So I'm upgrading from the MacBook Air M1, which came out in 2020. I've had it for around about 5 years now, and it was still a very good functioning machine. However, the base model, which is 8 GB of RAM and 256 GB of storage, was starting to experience heavy pressure as photo editing software updates and adds more features. That 8 GB of RAM was just starting to slow things down, and things just weren't as fluid as I would like. In the M5 version, which is also the base model, the difference being that it comes with 16 GB of RAM, and on this occasion, I got 512 GB of storage. So the local drive, along with my cloud storage, should be more than enough for what I want to do. This laptop's also got a 10-core CPU and a 10-core GPU, which is an upgrade from the M1 as well, which was 10 cores and 8 cores. Now, one striking difference, which I didn't realize would have as much of an impact as it has, is the screen. My previous MacBook only had a 13-inch screen, and this one is 15 inches. And I want to talk about that first. Those 2 extra inches of real estate on my laptop isn't something I realized I missed until I had it. So I was always okay on 13 inches, but now it's going to be hard to ever go back. The extra screen is great for culling images, going through your edits, just having a better perspective, a larger perspective of an image that you're working on. And it's a beautiful screen as well. It's gone from a Retina display, and now this one is a liquid Retina display. However, I will say, to the naked eye, I can't really tell much difference. The biggest difference, other than the size of the screen, is the extra 100 nits in brightness, coming from 400 nits now to 500 nits. That's been just easier on the eye when I'm editing in kind of bright environments and I need to bump up the brightness. It's been a real game changer in that sense, but the Retina and the liquid Retina, I'm not so sure that there's a huge difference to warrant upgrading. Though the wide P3 Gourmet is worth mentioning to photographers. There's a broader range of colors which can appeal to getting more accurate skin tones, and this is also good if you're someone who prints your work and wants true to life color reproduction that's coming from the screen onto the print and giving your print the best possible chance of being as accurate as you want it to be. But as I say, day-to-day use, if you're editing and then you're posting on social media, and most people are consuming photographs digitally nowadays, I don't think you'll notice that much of a big difference between the Retina and the liquid Retina. Another thing that's not overly a game changer, but it's still worth noting, coming from the M1, I had 2 USB-C Thunderbolt ports, and I had to use that to charge the device and also plug external connections for like SD cards and things like that. Now that the M5, and this isn't new to the M5, it was also on the M4 and I believe the M3, but there's MagSafe port to charge a laptop and also those 2 USB-C Thunderbolt connections, so I can add more things while still keeping my laptop on charge. This is great if I've got an SD card connected and maybe I'm doing some tethering with my camera at the same time, which can be heavy on the battery. I can leave myself on charge and I don't have to worry about my workflow being disrupted. One thing I do want to warn you about, I got the midnight blue one because I thought it looked cool, and it is a bit of a fingerprint magnet, and there's a lot of fingerprints, and I'm starting to question my fingers and my hygiene, but still they show up, and they won't be as present on lighter colors like light blues and the classic silvers. So just something to keep in mind if you do go for the midnight color. If you do like to eat and work, it's going to show up, okay? The best way to really see how this works for a photographer, the MacBook Air, is to run some photo editing software through it. Now, because Adobe Lightroom tends to be the most popular option, and a lot of you watching this will be using Lightroom, this is what I used for the base of my testing. And it was to find out just what the M5 could do in terms of handling large raw files, large exports, imports, and just day-to-day smoothness and functionality when using this laptop, and maybe using some other software in the background if I'm multitasking. I'm first going to share some numbers on import times, and there was a difference between my M1 and my M5, but something that you have to keep in mind is what's also impacting import times is the type of SD card you're using. I've got a SanDisk SD card, and also the connector that you're using if you have to have an external connector like I do with the MacBook, and I just got a cheap one on Amazon. So the read-write times aren't going to be amazing, but there was still a difference in terms of the end results. I imported 589 raw files, and Fujifilm cameras, that's around about an average of 60 megabytes per image. Now, the M1 took around about 22 minutes to complete the import, whereas the M5 took 20 minutes. So not that big of a difference, but a difference all the same. However, it's when we get to export times where it really matters, where you'll see an absolute huge difference in terms of what these machines can do. And I put a preset on all of the images. I exported the same amount as I imported, and the M1 took around about an hour to complete. The M5, less than 15 minutes. So if you are someone who just really wants to speed up their workflow, then an upgrade could be worth it if you're coming from, say, the M1 MacBook Air, or even the M2 as well. In terms of kind of workflows, so I was performing tasks such as AI masking, so using the removal tool. I was favoriting images. I'm flicking through them very quickly from one image to the next. I'm zooming in on an image. I'm zooming out on an image. And I never saw on the M5, which I was beginning to see on my M1, not often, but still, it was there, the multicolored spinning wheel of doom. The M5 handled everything perfectly, absolutely perfectly. I was having a great time with the big screen, the brighter screen, the faster performance. It made editing enjoyable again, which sometimes that's not always the case. Now, if you've not used the MacBook Airs before, these are fanless machines, so they have no cooling systems in terms of when your chips and other hardware start to get warm, because that's what happens naturally when you start putting them through their paces. A computer gets warm. Now, pro level MacBooks, MacBook Pros, they have fans. So they have a cooling system that cools the chips down. And in theory, there's better longevity, better performance, and it doesn't have to slow the machine down to ensure there isn't overheating to where it becomes a problem. And I did notice that the MacBook M5 Air did start to get warm. I could feel it on my legs, and this was maybe around about an hour into photo editing where it reached peak hotness. It didn't slow down performance, and it didn't have me worried. I wasn't like panicking, thinking my machine is going to set on fire. But it is something to know that if you don't like them running hot, that you will experience it on this, and it may sometimes mean taking a break from what you're doing, or doing less intensive tasks and just allowing the chips to cool and the hardware to cool and get back to where you were. But really, this isn't going to disrupt many workflows unless you're a super heavy user. I don't see this as being a big barrier to investing in this machine. So one question I had, and I was a little bit nervous about, is in 2026, is that 16 gigabytes of RAM going to be enough? And thankfully, the answer is yes. Now, you can see on Mac, I'll show you how you can see performance and memory performance as you've got different apps open. And I opened up multiple software. So I had Imagine AI open, I had Lightroom open, I had Lumina Neo open, I had some messaging chats open, some browsers open as well. And as you can see from here, that it didn't even get out of green in terms of the impact. You'll usually see green, which everything's good, orange, things are starting to get a little bit pressed on, and then red, okay, it's time to maybe shut some things down. So that's 16 gigabyte of RAM for my workflow, with those 60 megabyte files, other software open, some browser tabs and all that. Everything ran fine. I had no complaints. Now, how future-proof this is going to be as software gets more advanced and more technical, time will tell. But It was such a step up from the 8 GB, and it was a breath of fresh air. So I want to talk about the battery life, because that's a big factor. Now, Apple promises 18 hours, up to 18 hours of battery life. And as is often the case, that's probably for less intensive tasks. But when you're doing what I'm doing, when you're editing images, I'm doing video calls regularly for work at them frames. I'm also doing some video editing, light video editing, but still video editing all the same. I've got browsers open. I've got WordPress running. I got around about 13 hours of battery before it said it's time to charge it up, which is still good. And on days where I'm not as intense with my duties, I got around about 15 hours. So who is this MacBook for? Because I think sometimes professionals or heavy enthusiasts, they see MacBook Pro, they connect it with Pro, and they think, if I want to be a professional, I need this machine. Now, in some cases, that'll be true. But I tested, as I say, other photo editing software, not just Lightroom. I tested Imagine AI, I tested Capture One, Lumina Neo. All of them work fine. So don't just think that if you're not locked into Lightroom and you're using others, that it may be an issue. It's not. It handles every task perfectly. If you're, say, a medium format photographer, you're working in a studio, you're constantly getting clients and bookings, you're also doing videography as part of your business, and it's kind of high-end 8K, 4K video editing. Whilst this machine can still handle those tasks, maybe a Pro would be more suited to you, especially if you're in print. You're getting a better screen, you're getting better performance in terms of the CPU and GPU, and you're also getting those fans which can cool down your system, so you don't have to worry ever about your workflow being disrupted. Maybe the Pro's for you, but if you're not that super heavy user, then I think you're going to be fine with the MacBook Air M5. Now, if you already have an M3 or an M4, do I think this is worth the upgrade? No. Those are still very capable machines, especially the M4. They're going to keep getting software updates. And if you're running on 16 GB of RAM and you've got enough storage, then keep it. If it works fine, you do not need this laptop. If you are like me, coming from the OG M1 MacBook Air, and you are starting to see it slow down, and still, as I say, that's a great machine, then I don't think you'll regret upgrading to the M5. I certainly don't. I love this machine. As I say, the extra 2 inches of real estate on the screen have been a game changer, as of the brightness and the performance. There's no sluggishness. It runs great. And my workflow has just not only become more efficient, but more enjoyable. So those are my thoughts on the MacBook Air M5. Have you used this machine? I'd love to know what you think about it. Let me know down in the comments. What current MacBook are you using, or Windows laptop? What are you using? Again, let me know down in the comments. And if you like this video, please do hit a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm Dan. This is Them Frames. See ya.